Sometimes, just when everything seems to be stable, we get blindsided. It happens to everyone sooner or later. We can't control some of the challenges that life throws at us, but we can control how we react to them. That was certainly the case for many businesses when the pandemic hit. Not all were easily parlayed into remote work, and one of the hardest hit was the travel industry. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome to Launch to Legendary, where we meet people who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary, who have taken challenges and turned them into opportunities, and who've created success on their own terms. Today we're joined by Sharon Hunter, who during the course of her life has faced enormous trials and traumas, but has come back fighting. The pandemic laid waste to her once thriving travel agency, forcing her to take charge of both her business and her mindset. In this episode, Sharon shares how she turned a crisis into an opportunity to develop a stronger, more confident and centered mindset that not only got her through the pandemic years, but has become the foundation on which she's built a new business platform. Sharon, I am so excited to have you here with us today.
I find through this whole journey that I've gone through that I had to learn to trust myself. I was just before COVID hit. So looking back now, I can see that I had already started to transform into a motivational mentor and perspective strategist. I just didn't realize it until the pandemic hit and shut my world down. I spoke at a wellness retreat in Jamaica, literally like 2 or 3 weeks before the world shut down. And I was at a function at just before the event that happened to be on Ash Wednesday. I was invited to church services. And as I was sitting there listening to these group of people talk, I was the obvious person out, right? Like I was the white person in a room full of Black people. I did not speak patois. I spoke Canadian English. I, didn't come from the tropics. So everything about the whole experience was definitely a culture shock. But sitting there listening to these group of people talking, I realized that no matter where we are in the world, whether we're Black, white, thin, tall, fat, short, we're Belgian, we're Canadian, we're Egyptian, whatever, we all want the same basic things, is to be loved, heard, validated, and understood. When COVID hit and I started to go through this unbelievable thing, because owning and operating a travel agency in the middle of a pandemic or the beginning of a pandemic is very, very challenging when nobody has really experienced that before. So all through the pandemic, like I own and operate a storefront travel agency that specializes in Disney and Universal Vacations. So it's everything outside of my country's borders, right? I don't sell product in the country I live. So even as the pandemic started to settle down a little bit and people were able to start roaming freely outside of their homes again, my niche was beyond my borders. So I still had bills to pay. I still had things to do. My agents had to go and live their lives and find other ways of making an income. So I felt like I was completely isolated and left with my thoughts of the childhood trauma that I dealt with and all that, like everything who made me who I am just got taken away from me. And it just kind of like actively ate at my brain cells. And it literally, like 2 or 3 days before the world shut down, my daughter was injured on the job and could not care for herself. So she had to move back home. Our world shut down here in Canada. By the time COVID hit us, was literally hours away from one of our busiest seasons, which is our spring break.
Oh,
and we don't get paid until after people travel. And all of a sudden, the travel just got put on a halt. And I had clients that were hours away from leaving for the airport. Just everything in my world got turned upside down. And I was left to deal with that emotionally. I could sit there and I could blame. I could blame the situation. I could blame COVID. I could blame whoever it was, the government that made the decision to close everything down. There's so many areas that I could blame, but because I had healed enough from my own inner thoughts, I've learned how to cope and find the positives. And so when I'm working one-on-one with clients or even in the group setting, one of the things that I talk about is I use 2020 as an example of how to look at things. If I said 2020 sucked, nobody could blame me for feeling that. But then let's look at it from a different perspective. On January 1st of 2020, the agency that I built and I worked so hard for received the designation of earmarked. And what that means is that we became officially an authorized Disney vacation planner because of our sales
Congratulations.
level.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited that we still hold that designation, even through COVID. We still hold that designation. I may not have crossed the finish line of that marathon, but I crossed the start line.
Right.
And 3 or 4 years before that, I weighed 140 pounds more than I did when I crossed that start line. So I may not have
Wow.
done the whole 42 kilometers, but I did 10K. I did 10K when 3 years earlier I had a walker. So
Wow.
it's like, yay
Yeah.
me, right? And because I had that goal, it opened up so many other doors, which kind of put me into the motivational mentoring because I realized that I had a voice and I started talking about my past, and which invited me to Jamaica. And speaking there, I now have a whole set of people in my world that I didn't know existed in 2020 that to this day, they are close family friends. My daughter had somewhere to go. And my son's now wife moved in with us just before COVID hit. And because my daughter ended up coming home, my daughter and my daughter-in-law are best
Wow.
friends.
Nice.
And that bond might not have happened had she not moved home. So I can look at 2020 with, wow, that sucked. It was awful. It was da da da. Or I can look at the positives that happen and focus on those, which give me strength during the negatives. And it's learning all of those kind of mindsets to just change how you look at things, because I am better off if I focus on the positives. And then the people around me are better off, which makes my day that much better. Right. So it's just it begins and ends with me. And it's learning to ask myself, what role do I play in what is happening right now and the outcome from what is happening right now? I have to take responsibility for everything I do.
Yeah. I think that's such an important way to look at it. And, just by reframing it, right, you take something that essentially is a negative and you spin it into something that's a little more positive, or that gives you a step to get to the next rung on the ladder.
Absolutely.
How did you pivot? I mean, you went from having this massively successful travel agency, you got hit by COVID, which means that there's not going to be any travel. What did you
Yeah.
do then in the business? I mean, what was your next move?
Um, Basically, the next move was just get out of bed in the morning. Just get out of bed in the morning. With this agency, we're all about, it's not selling a trip, it's showing people how to embrace the memories that they're going to make. And I spend a lot of time just talking, because I'm sure you realize that I like to talk. And it was really hard because I'm the one in my family that kind of everybody comes to, or even in the business, to hold everything together. And it was kind of like, okay, I'm crumbling here. I didn't know what to do because that interaction with people was gone. Just even going out for a coffee, I talk to strangers all the time. I strike up conversations. And but because I've learned to recognize when I am mentally struggling, I've also learned what my supports are. I recognize by learning about me and understanding how I act and react to things, as soon as I start to feel that, I've got those coping mechanisms in place. So I remember one time, I wasn't long into, uh, I'd say maybe about 4 or 5 weeks, maybe a little bit longer into the shutdown, because I've been a Disney specializing agent for over 16 years, but also I've been like a huge Disney fanatic since I was a child, because Walt Disney is what I try to live every day. Here's a guy who was told he had no talent, he had nothing, he had no skills, but he had this vision in his head, no matter how crazy it was. And he believed in himself. As long as your morals are in check and your integrity is in check and you're doing everything with the right intention, believe in your dreams. So I have surrounded myself with that, because it's possible. Who doesn't know the name Disney now because he believed inside his head? So about, 6 weeks or so after the world had shut down, people are always sending me cute memes or this story they read about Disney or, hey, look at this wallpaper, look at the way this person does. And I love it because it shows that people are thinking of me. Like all of the little knickknacks behind my head and all around my office and everything, almost every one of them are gifts that somebody else has given me, what I call just because gifts, because they saw something that reminded me and they thought, oh, she would love that. I'm going to get that for her.
Right. Nice.
But the downside of that is every time something was going bad because of COVID, like staff getting laid off, this, whatever, people were sending me the updated news. I was getting text messages, instant messaging. I was being tagged in posts and everything. And it was all the depressing, horrible stuff. And once upon a time, I would have just kept taking it and taking it in, but I had to go, this isn't making me feel good.
Right.
So stepping out of my comfort zone, I did a very long post and I said, it makes me very happy when people see things that make me think of that or make them think of me and they want to share. But I want to share with you something, the other side of things. Imagine what it feels like owning and operating something that you have worked your entire life to build that makes you you. Right? Like I wasn't somebody's mom or wife or daughter or sister or insert whatever here. I was Sharon. I finally figured out who Sharon was and what she wanted to, and I created this life for myself. And now the very core of who I am is being threatened. And people are constantly sending me more and more and more negative news when it's out of my control. Please, I appreciate, always never stop sending me the positive stuff, but really please think twice before you send me the negative stuff because it is not good for my mental state at this time. I've learned how to recognize that I need a boundary, and I've also learned how to communicate that boundary and accept that not everybody's going to like that boundary, but if I do it with my morals and integrity in check, then it's okay for me to say, please don't do that. And if they don't like it, that's their story that they're telling themselves. I find that in today's day and age, society seems to be accepting that everything is everybody else's fault and everybody should do what I feel is their correct behavior. I being any one of us who somehow learned that it's okay for us to constantly say, I don't like that, you can't do it. I don't like that, you can't do it. I don't like that, you can't do it. And there is boundaries, but we can't be everything to everybody. And that's where I was starting to realize that I was trying to appease everybody else's needs and wants and likes and desires. And it led me down a very, very deep depression. And I had a lot of childhood trauma that I literally, even just 3 weeks ago, uncovered something that stems back 50 years.
Wow.
That was like the mother of all triggers that has been controlling so many things throughout my life. But by looking into myself and understanding why I react the way I do to things, I'm constantly uncovering things that makes me be a better me than I was yesterday. I'm no better than anybody else. I just want to be better than myself in the parts that I'm unhappy with. And the change all begins with me.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you on mindset shift. And also on the fact that you have to go on what's often referred to as a mental health diet, which means cut out all the clickbaity headlines that are just there to, essentially bring you down. They don't, even if the situation isn't that bad, they tend to sensationalize things to the point where it seems bad, and it creates a tremendous amount of misery for people. I know myself, I essentially never looked at the news. And when I started to do so for a period of time,
you feel it.
I brought myself into a very bad place, made a lot of bad decisions because I was constantly having those bad influences. And I finally had to turn off the noise and say, I just need to have like a very brief digest of only what's essential. And I don't need anybody's opinion on it and all the hype.
Exactly.
I totally agree with you.
It's so important. And that's where it's like, when you take the time to learn and understand yourself, and this is how I work with clients, is even on the vacation side of things, like every interaction I have with clients is understanding what your needs are. And if you don't know what your needs are, how can you communicate them to others? But even I had to learn how to communicate it to myself even. And I recognized, like in the fall, I had a lot of noise coming at me. And in the travel industry, the pandemic, we're still feeling the effect, and it just got overwhelming. And in the fall, I started to recognize, okay, I'm getting that overwhelmed feeling. I need to do something. I need to put the boundaries up. And I had two weddings, one being my son's and one being one of my travel agents who I've known for many years. I had their weddings. And then I had 3 conferences that I was supposed to attend. And it was like, I blew them all off. I got in the car, I packed up my stuff, and I said to my husband, I'm going for a drive and I don't know when I'll be back.
Oh my gosh.
I love you. Bye. And I went on a 6,000 kilometer road trip to the ocean and back. I was gone 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
It was one of the best things I have ever done in my life, because I blocked out the noise, and I learned so much about myself. Just the fact that I could do that. Like, I used to be that shy, fat kid that I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to stand up in front of anybody. I took zeros in school because I would never do anything by myself. So for me to get in my car and drive for 2.5 weeks back and forth by myself, and one province in Canada is predominantly French. So I had to go through that province and kind of rely on some of my French skills and how to relax and kind of, communicate and that kind of thing. And it was like, I did it. And as I was getting closer to home on my way back, the sun was starting to set, and I was driving towards the sunset. And I got this overwhelming sense of, I can do anything I put my mind to, even if I just feel the fear and do it anyways. If I just believe, because I try to do what I call it my magic pill, which is my morals, my attitude, my gratitude, my integrity, and my commitment. As long as those 5 things fall into alignment with me, then what I'm doing is right. And I just felt like it was such a great feeling. And then literally 2 or 3 days after I got back, my husband experienced some significant health issues that are still kind of a little bit ongoing and a little bit concerning. So I needed that strength. If I hadn't gone away, I've got a senior parent that there's issues with that as well. And it all kind of hit me as soon as I got back. I was glad that I took that time for myself, because I wouldn't have survived if I hadn't. And even just over the last 2-3 months, I started stepping back from everybody, like even stepping back from going to church, not because I was trying to hide, but because I realized I needed to detox. I needed to turn off the noise. And so I jokingly said that I gave up people for Lent, because people meant well. They meant well, right? And so many people do. And that's where it's like understanding that people have good intentions, and they'd be like, oh, you should do this and you should do this. And I realized that constantly saying what I was struggling with, kept me down at that level of struggle. It was opening more tabs in my brain of all the different people who mean well going, oh, you should try this and you should do this, that I was sitting in a corner going, because I don't know what to do. So I gave up people from any setting that I could, to quiet the noise and to get a
Right.
better perspective. And I've learned that that's a behavior that I think most of us should try, whether it even just be a day of just shut off the internet, shut off the TV, shut off your phone, go for a walk in nature, go sit on a beach at sunrise. I've learned what brings peace to me. And so I chase it when I get that overwhelming feeling. I literally have to kind of put the pen down and go, okay, I need to reset. And it's learning
Right.
what works for resetting for me, because what might work for me might not work for the next guy. And if you don't take the time to learn what stresses you, what doesn't stress you, what gives you peace, like one of my favorite things to do is doodle. Any kind of marker or paper, if you put it anywhere near me, at some point, it will be in my hand and I will be doodling. Like right now, I can see 4 pens sitting on my desk and there's like a lot of paper. It's like right there. But that's what's calming and enjoyable to me. Going for a walk as the sun is rising, that is calming for me. Sitting and listening to ocean or like watching nature, that is calming to me. My husband loves to sit and watch sports. That is
Right.
calming to him at the end of a long day. I get stressed listening to sports
Right.
because
Right.
there's this one guy that he listens to when he talks about our province's hockey team. The guy yells. Like he's
Right.
constantly in his
Right.
podcast and is like, this is going on, this is going on. And I'm like, I got to leave the room. I just imagine this guy's poor wife. I'm hoping his room is really well soundproof because he's so loud. To me, that's stressing, whereas my husband finds it very, very calming.
Yeah.
So it's learning what works for you without judging what works for somebody else. I find society so much in order to build something up, they have a tendency to tear something or someone else down.
Mm.
And it's finding that balance. I'm no better than anybody else. I'm just different. And it's finding what my difference is while keeping my morals and integrity in check. And if we all do that, I think we as individuals are better off, but we as a society are better off too, because there's more grace and forgiveness that goes along with that as well. And one of the biggest things is learning to forgive ourselves and give ourselves a little bit of grace. And I actually said to somebody yesterday, and I use this a lot when I'm talking with clients, when was the last time you appreciated yourself? Like literally sat down and went, you know what? I did this today and I am grateful that I saw the need for that. And as I was out for my morning walk this morning, I realized that I asked that question of a lot of people, but I can't tell you the last time I sat down and did that for myself. And it's
Right.
like, oh, I really should listen to myself occasionally because sometimes I have good advice, but it's learning to recognize that we have to look at ourselves first before any change is going to happen. We have to look at ourselves. And it's funny, actually, I heard something this morning that made me, where is it? If you want to be saved from your present suffering, you must be willing to change and be changed in the present.
Right.
So you have to be willing to accept that there's change. You have to look at yourself. And the other thing that I realized, I wrote a note beside that this morning. It said, one of the hardest things to change about ourselves is our perspective.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Like when I read that first thing, that was the note that came to my brain afterwards. And it's so true. And as a perspective strategist, that is one of the biggest obstacles that I face when I'm talking one-on-one with people, is just making them aware that there is more than one perspective. I don't tell people what to do. I just show them other options, and it's up
Right.
to them to decide what's going to work best for them, right?
So what happened then?
Mhm.
You had your travel agency, COVID hit, things went to smash.
Yep.
You did a long soul searching car trek, right? 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
now you're back at home. What's happening with the travel agency?
Travel is coming back over the last several months, 2 or 3 months. I've been clients that I haven't heard from in like 6 or 7 years are traveling again.
Oh, that's good.
I And I'm getting people, like, even going into our spring break this year, we still noticed a little bit of a trend that people were hesitant because for the last 3 years, people had it booked and then it was snagged away from them. So this year we felt it that people were afraid to book in
Right.
case that happened again,
Sure.
right? They're like, well, I want to go. And so,
Right.
yeah, it's definitely picking up. We're getting a lot of multi-generational families, like grandma, grandpa are paying for the kids and the grandkids so that they can capture those memories, because going
Right.
through COVID, they've realized how precious life is, how
Right.
much they missed out on not being able to have that time with their family. And we've always done multi-generational, but it's to the point now where I think we're even specializing in multi-generational, because we recognize that I actually just got an amazing testimony yesterday from one of the multi-generations that just got back. And they actually made a comment in it that we range from 3 to 78 years old. And Sharon knew how to address all the needs based on the age and the requirements. And there were so many moving parts. And so I've realized that we've kind of got like this little bit of specialty going on that people are recognizing. So yeah, it's really starting to pick up. That, I've actually got somebody coming in for an interview tomorrow that we're having to hire agents because we see the demand starting to increase. We're in our typical slow season right now. June is our slowest month of the year. Once school lets out, all that kind of stuff, that we start seeing, and we go back into our next busy season. So we're back seeing the historical highs and lows that we saw before COVID, which is a really, really good sign. And we have so many repeat clients that have been traveling with us for many years, and we're starting to see them coming back, but we're also getting a lot of the new referrals as well. And COVID, I use the time wisely as an agency owner, but even as a prospective strategist, was learning the different tools that are out there. Like, I could sit and I could use COVID as a crutch, which nobody would blame me, or I could use it as a step. And I truly believe in using everything, good or bad, as a step. It's a lesson. I needed to learn something. And so I've been able to revamp a lot of the ways that we do things, as far as training agents, as far as the tools that we use to communicate amongst ourselves, to communicate with our clients and things like that. So when I had downtime, I had time to work on the business instead of in the business. So one of the things I am often heard saying is that COVID didn't happen to me, it happened for me. Right. So I appreciate the blessings that COVID brought me. I appreciate the blessings that any kind of valleys that I've gone through, because I always come out stronger with a different perspective. And it enables me to look for ways around that roadblock that I may not have discovered those different techniques or styles or programs or whatever if I hadn't had that roadblock. In all honesty, you and I might not even be having this conversation if that hadn't happened, because I ended up going into the virtual world, which opened up doors, which connected you and I that are from countries on opposite ends of the world, right?
That's so very true, Sharon. I mean, yeah, COVID was definitely, in many ways, right, a hidden blessing. Of course, it was definitely a terrible situation for many, many people who got ill and so forth. We can't deny that. Yeah. But at the same time, like you said, it has opened up a huge world of opportunities, particularly for people, as you're saying, to connect with people all over the world. And it's really been quite amazing. I like your mindset around that you're looking more at like, okay, well, this is a bad situation, but how do I pivot? How do I parlay that into something better?
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's always going to be something bad. And I truly say there are no bad days. This is what I say to myself. There are no bad days. There are just unmagical moments in a good day. Right. So I can't go back and change my past, but I can rewrite my story. I can rewrite the story I tell myself. And so I realized that through all of this, through COVID, through the struggles of keeping the travel agencies going, through the struggles of starting a second business as a prospective strategist. I had something that I call them my little whispers that God kind of puts into my head. I had an aha moment about several weeks ago, because as a prospective strategist, I want to help people. I'm the dream hunter. That's why I'm branded as my
Right.
travel agency is Dream Hunter Vacations. I'm Sharon the Dream Hunter. Everybody has dreams, and I want to help people achieve their dreams, because it's so amazing when you overcome things. Whether you want to lose weight, run a marathon, start a business, speak another language, all of which I've tried to do all of these things, the steps in doing it are all the same, because it starts in your brain, it starts in your mind. And so as a dream hunter, I have a formula that I've created to help people overcome those obstacles, to give them new perspectives that encourage choice and growth and positive outcomes, but with honest guidance. And I had this saying from actually one of the Disney movies that came into my view quite often, that I've actually written on my wall, that says the very things that held you down are the very things that are going to carry you up, up, up. And it's Timothy Mouse from Dumbo. And I realized at that moment that the one thing that as a business owner, especially through COVID, but even before COVID, the one thing as a business owner that I was missing is that there's nobody above me to talk to when I'm struggling with something. Right. If I'm struggling trying to meet payroll, or I'm struggling with, I could go home and I could talk to my husband, but he's going to put a different spin on it, because he's seeing it as, oh, does that mean you're not paying yourself again this week, and that I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do, blah, 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 or we're not going to be able to make a mortgage payment, or, so he's not a good ally to talk to in that case, because he's seeing it from a different perspective. I can't talk about one staff member with a different staff member, because that's the conflict of interest. And I realized that as a business owner, I needed that life support.
Right.
I didn't necessarily need how to build an email funnel, how to do a lead magnet, how to do that. Like, yes,
Right.
I need to learn those things, but it was the life support that I was missing. And when I realized that, business owners are people too, that's when I created the community that I call the BOSS, which is actually an acronym for Business Owner Support System. It's doing those weekly calls of just drop in and talk and just dance and scream and yell in a safe place without judgment, but also using all our collective expertise, that if somebody is struggling with something, maybe somebody else has already gone through it and can help guide you to that tool that will help you overcome it without you pulling out your hair and but a safe place amongst peers who understand what it's like to be the business owner.
Right.
So again, it didn't happen to me, it happened for me, because this came out of it, and it's being very well received. There's a saying that I say to my agents all the time, because we get so many people that come to us looking to be a travel agent with us, because we get to go to Disney World for work sometimes. It's not all magic pixie dust, but one of the first things I ask people is, are you interested or are you committed?
Right.
Because there's a difference. Right? If you're committed to being a part of this community, and committed to your own personal growth and change, and willing to accept that you have a role in what happens in your day to day and how you're feeling, then this isn't the group for you, because we're not going to help you if you can't help yourself. We have to do the work. Like, there's a saying that you can't pay somebody else to do your push-ups and expect the same results. Right. So if somebody is coming into the community that wants to blame and expect everybody else to do the work, and they're not willing to change, then this isn't the community for them. Right. And it's just finding what works for each of us. It's learning how we learn, how we grow, and then gravitating towards those groups and just cultivating those relationships. And it's learning about yourself first and everything else second.
I really want to thank you so much for sharing all this with us, and for taking the time.
You're very welcome
to come on the podcast. I think that there's just so many insights that you bring, and that people can really be inspired by your journey.
Thank you. I hope that if even one person figures things out quicker than I did, then my pain was worth it for somebody else. And that alone makes me feel good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are listening to this will really be inspired. And I'll definitely include links to the various platforms that you've put together. I think your business owners group
Awesome.
is an important opportunity for people to check out. And I think just in general, your story has been very inspirational. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it too. Awesome. It's been wonderful.